Hi, I'm attorney Ben Schwartz. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about valuing personal injury cases. You know, there's a video blog on our schwartzandschwartz.com website, and the blog post was done back in 2016 by yours truly, your favorite legal blogger. But basically the video post was, how much is my personal injury case worth? And in the last couple of years, I've had a number of folks contact me, other attorneys. I've had people who've actually been injured in car accidents contact me, and I've had insurance claims representatives contact me, and also one defense attorney. We had a conversation about this, about valuing personal injury claims for settlement, car accident cases for settlement. And a lot of people have asked me, like, okay, we understand it's hard to gauge the settlement value of a personal injury case from a motor vehicle accident or from a slip and fall, but what are you looking at to determine what the value is? And you know, really, there are 10 things that you look at to determine the value of a personal injury case. And I just sort of sat down and jotted them down on a piece of paper, you know, what I think those 10 things are. Here's what I think they are. First off, what are the medical expenses in the case, not that were incurred, but that you can show to the jury? In other words, if, let's say that I live in Delaware and I'm driving my car that I bought, I insured in Delaware, so I've got Delaware auto insurance. Let's say that I get injured in a car accident and I've got a bunch of medical bills. Well, my car insurance is going to pay those medical bills. And then when I sue the at-fault driver, or I make a claim against the at-fault driver's insurance company, those medical bills are not part of the case, because that's how it works. That's the statutory scheme in Delaware. So I'm not talking about medical bills that can't be boarded, that can't be shown to the jury. I'm talking about what medical bills are going to be shown to the jury for the jury to take into consideration if you file a lawsuit and go to trial. You know, maybe I've got a broken arm from a car accident, and maybe none of those medical expenses are going to be shown to the jury. But if it was a slip and fall case, or if it was a car accident in another jurisdiction, maybe all of those medical expenses would be shown to the jury. I think that makes a heck of a lot of difference. So number one is, what are the medical expenses that are boardable, that are going to be shown to the jury? The second thing is, what lost wages are going to be shown to the jury, or other expenses will be shown to the jury. Number three is, are there independent or objective indicators of injury? I think if I'm injured in a car accident and I go to trial and I'm explaining to the jury what I've been through, I think it's one thing for me to say, oh, I've got neck pain, I've got shoulder pain. I think it's an entirely different situation when my doctor says, I examined Ben's neck, and on palpation, which means when I'm physically touching, when I'm physically examining the neck, if the doctor says, I felt muscle spasm, you know, when I put my fingers on the muscle of Ben's neck after this car accident, I can feel the muscle spasming. That, you know, maybe I've got a broken arm from a car accident, and maybe none of those medical expenses are going to be shown to the jury. But if it was a slip and fall case, or if it was a car accident in another jurisdiction, maybe all of those medical expenses would be shown to the jury. I think that makes a heck of a lot of difference. So number one is, what are the medical expenses that are boardable, that are going to be shown to the jury? The second thing is, what lost wages are going to be shown to the jury, or other expenses will be shown to the jury. Number three is, are there independent or objective indicators of injury? I think if I'm injured in a car accident and I go to trial and I'm explaining to the jury what I've been through, I think it's one thing for me to say, oh, I've got neck pain, I've got shoulder pain. I think it's an entirely different situation when my doctor says, I examined Ben's neck, and on palpation, which means when I'm physically touching, when I'm physically examining the neck, if the doctor says, I felt muscle spasm, you know, when I put my fingers on the muscle of Ben's neck after this car accident, I can feel the muscle spasming. That is an indication that there is damage to those muscle fibers or connective tissues, and that's not something that can be faked. So I think it's very important to distinguish between cases where there is some objective, independent indication that there is a physical injury, as compared to those cases where you really have to rely on the claimant or rely on the plaintiff to testify truthfully. Another item that I would look at to determine case value is the jurisdiction going to be conservative or is it going to be liberal? If you're, we've got offices, from essentially from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Havertown, Pennsylvania, down to Salisbury, Maryland. And, we've got offices in Delaware, in Wilmington, and Dover. There's a big difference if you're trying a case in Sussex County, Delaware, versus if you're trying a case in Newcastle County, Delaware. One jurisdiction tends to be pretty conservative. Another jurisdiction tends to be a little more centrist, or a little more liberal, and I think that significantly affects the case value. So are you talking about an accident that happened or a lawsuit that's going to get filed in a politically conservative area, or a politically liberal area, or something in between? The fifth thing I would look at is the jurisdiction wealthy? Is the jurisdiction poor? If your average household income is $11,000 a year and your juror says, I really like the plaintiff, I want to do them a really solid favor and award them a year's worth of income, you're talking about an $11,000 jury verdict. If you're in a place where the average median household income is $100,000 a year and they want to give you a decent award and award you a year's worth of income for them, you're talking about a six-figure jury verdict. So I think that the financial wherewithal of the jurors, the frame of reference of the jurors, that's going to make a big difference. And I talk to my clients about this all the time. Look at house values in the area where you're going to be trying that case. Are we talking about an area where a house costs $90,000, or are we talking about an area where a house costs $800,000? That sort of frame of reference for the jurors is going to make a big difference. The sixth thing is, are there liability defenses that are going to cut the value, the settlement value, or eliminate any value? If I'm in a car accident in Delaware, I'm driving a car and someone hits me, and I haven't done anything wrong to cause or contribute to the accident, that case has, full value. If I'm in Delaware and I'm 10% at fault in causing my accident, that case has 90% value because Delaware follows modified comparative negligence. If I'm having the same accident across the line in Maryland, where the law is completely different, the law is straight contributory negligence. Well, in Maryland, if you're 1% at fault, you don't have a case. You can't get a verdict. And so the law of the jurisdiction and the degree of fault of the claimant or the plaintiff may have something big to do with how the case is valued for settlement. Number 7, can I see the injury? As a juror, I'm sitting in the jury box. The plaintiff gets up, walks to the witness stand, takes a witness stand, and testifies. If I don't see anything wrong with that person, it's hard for me to award them substantial compensation for their injury. If it's an injury that I can see, even if it's an internal injury, if I'm looking at the X-ray or the CT scan, post-surgery showing the rod and screws, at least now I can see there's an injury there. Or is it a case where it's just invisible? You're not going to be able to see it. You're relying on physicians to testify about those objective, signs or symptoms of the injury. You're relying on the plaintiff to testify about their pain and suffering. That really, I think, affects the case value quite a bit. Is the injury, here's another one, is the injury permanent? Is it going to be a lifelong injury? Is there a doctor who's getting on the witness stand and testifying that they treated the plaintiff and that this injury is going to last for the entire lifetime of this person, or is it temporary? Along those same lines, you can have an injury that may be permanent, but that isn't going to result in any future surgery, that isn't going to result in any future care. And you can have a permanent injury that will give you continued pain into the future for the rest of your life. You can have an injury where you're going to need $2,000 a year of medical care and treatment, palliative care for the rest of your life. And that produces a huge amount of money, that you're showing a jury, that you're boarding, that you're putting up on the board to show the jury for future cost of care. So that's one thing that I would look at there, is what is the future cost of care. Finally, the 10th item is where does the injury fall on the spectrum of injuries from these types of accidents? In other words, is it a sprain and strain, or a little further down the continuum, it becomes a surgical case? Is it multiple surgeries? Is it a case that involves paralysis or impaired functioning of an organ, or impaired functioning of a muscle group? Is it an injury that involves paralysis? Is it an injury that involves amputated or missing limbs? Is it an injury that results in death? There's this continuum of how bad things can get, and where the case falls on that continuum has a lot to do with the value of the case. So in any event, I'm attorney Ben Schwartz. These are 10 things that you look at to evaluate the value of a personal injury case. If you've been injured in an accident and you're going to go to an attorney and have a discussion about settling your case, or you're going to have a discussion about what to expect if you go and try the case to a jury, these are the 10 things. If I were you, I would make a list of these 10 things and then make notes about your own injury and discuss it with your attorney, because this gives you some objective criteria on how you come up with the number that you would accept to settle your case. And it gives your attorney some objective criteria to look at to determine how she or he should be presenting your case. A lot of the things that you talk about behind these criteria, a lot of the things that if you have a conversation guided by these criteria, a lot of these things aren't things that your attorney might be thinking about. And so hopefully this will help you and your attorney get a better settlement or a better verdict. If you have questions about personal injury cases or personal injury litigation in general, my name is Ben Schwartz. I'm an attorney. My email address is ben.schwartz@schwartzandschwartz.com. Thanks for watching.